Sometimes the person who saves your life is the one you'd never let through the front door. A receptionist noticed what a room full of surgeons missed, and the most feared man in the city was 30 seconds from being carved open with the wrong blood type. Kwang-seok didn't beg. Men like him didn't. They ruled through fear, commanded through silence, and when they bled, entire empires trembled. Tonight, he lay unconscious on cold steel, his tiger tattoo half covered by surgical drapes, his gold chain discarded in a metal tray like evidence at a crime scene. The pre-op light burned red above operating room 4. 6 masked surgeons stood ready, instruments gleaming under surgical lamps, prepared to make the first incision into a man who'd never been touched without his permission. Betty Pullen sat 3 floors below, trapped behind plexiglass and paperwork, invisible to everyone who mattered. She'd been staring at the same digital file for 2 minutes. Her finger hovered over the screen, tracing the blood type entry that didn't match, that couldn't match. Her breath caught. The intake form listed O positive. The pre-op labs screamed A negative. She cross-referenced the patient ID number. Her stomach dropped. The labs belonged to someone already dead. The fluorescent lights above her desk hummed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She could smell the bitter coffee from the doctor's lounge down the hall, hear the distant mechanical breathing of ventilators, feel the weight of something terrible unfolding in real time. If they pushed those blood thinners, if they started that anesthesia protocol, Kwang-seok's organs wouldn't just fail, they'd dissolve from the inside out. Betty's hands trembled as she grabbed the phone. But before she could dial, she saw it. The file refreshing on her screen, the numbers changing right in front of her eyes, someone rewriting reality while she watched. This wasn't a mistake. This was murder dressed in a white coat, and she was the only one who knew. The operating room was 3 floors up, past security checkpoints she had no clearance to cross, guarded by men paid to kill first and ask questions never. The surgery would begin in 8 minutes, maybe less. But here's the thing about being invisible for too long. You learn exactly how to move through spaces that think you don't exist. Betty stood, her receptionist blazer suddenly feeling too tight, too professional, and too much like a costume for someone playing a role she'd outgrown years ago. Once upon a time, she'd been brilliant, a hematology student with a future that shined brighter than any surgical lamp. Until one false accusation, one corrupt doctor, one rigged tribunal stripped it all away and left her here, filing papers for people who wouldn't meet her eyes. That same doctor was upstairs right now, scalpel in hand, seconds from finishing what he started. Not tonight. Betty grabbed the original file from the basement server, shoved it onto a tablet, and ran. Will she reach the operating room before the first cut? Will the surgeons believe a receptionist over their own protocol? And when Kwang-seok's bodyguards see a black woman in scrubs bursting through those doors screaming, "Stop the surgery," will they listen? Or will they silence her permanently? Subscribe to see how this unfolds and comment where you're watching from. I will love to say hello to you just to know how far our story is going. The first black SUV had pulled up at 9:47 p.m., sleek and silent as a predator. Then another, then 3 more. Betty watched through the reinforced glass as they formed a semicircle under the ambulance port lights. Kwang-seok emerged slowly, one hand pressed against his chest, his face carved from stone and pain he refused to acknowledge. The tiger tattoo on his neck seemed to ripple under the fluorescent lights. His heavy gold chain caught the glare, throwing tiny fragments of light across the concrete. Behind him, 4 guards formed a moving wall of muscle and menace. Betty's desk phone rang. "VIP intake now." It was Margaret Chen, the hospital administrator. "Presidential suite prep. Cardiac surgical team is already assembling. You handle the paperwork personally, Betty. Fast and flawless." Up close, Kwang-seok looked worse than she'd thought. Gray undertone, shallow breathing, slight tremor. Signs of cardiac distress her medical training cataloged automatically. "Name?" she asked. Kwang-seok Park. No middle name, no insurance, cash payment. She worked through the intake. When she reached blood type, he answered clearly, O positive. Betty typed it in, flagged the file as critical, and hit submit. The bodyguards closed ranks, and the entourage moved toward the elevators. The file came back from pre-op labs at 10:15 p.m. Betty pulled it up out of habit, scanning the header. Then she saw the blood type, a negative. Her finger froze on the mouse. She scrolled back. The intake form she'd filled out 30 minutes ago clearly showed O positive. Blood type didn't change. This was two completely different biological realities. Betty grabbed the phone and dialed the fourth-floor nurses' station. After being transferred, head nurse Morrison answered, "What's the problem?" The Park file shows two different blood types. Intake says O positive, but pre-op labs came back A negative. Unless you made a transcription error at intake. I didn't. I entered exactly what the patient stated. Then the patient was mistaken, and the lab results are accurate. We draw blood. We test it. Science doesn't lie, Ms. Pullen. Morrison's tone was ice. Are you a doctor, Ms. Pullen? No, but... Then I suggest you stay in your lane and let the medical professionals handle the medicine. The line went dead. Betty pulled the file back up, determined to find proof. The timestamp caught her eye. 10:17 p.m. But the lab results had come through at 10:15. She was sure of it. She refreshed the screen. 10:19 p.m., then 10:21 p.m. The blood type field flickered, shimmering before resolving back to A negative. Her skin went cold. She opened the back-end server logs. File accessed at 10:03 p.m. by Dr. Eris Thorne, Chief of Surgery. Then another entry at 10:09 p.m. File modified. Blood type field updated from O positive to A negative. She kept scrolling. Another modification at 10:14 p.m., changing the original blood draw timestamp to make it look like the sample was taken before Kwang-seok even arrived. Betty refreshed the log. The entries vanished, wiped clean. Someone was scrubbing the records in real time. Someone who knew she was looking. This wasn't negligence. This was murder. And she had maybe 15 minutes to prove it. The man appeared at her desk so quietly she didn't hear him approach. He wore a charcoal suit, expensive watch, forgettable features. Ms. Pullen, do you have a moment? Every instinct screamed at her to run. The Park case is complicated, he said softly. A lot of powerful people have investment in how tonight unfolds. You notice something. That's admirable. But complicated situations require everyone to stay in their lane. Are you threatening me? I'm advising you. He straightened. Keep your head down if you want to keep it, Ms. Pullen. He walked away, disappearing through the doors like smoke. Betty looked at the clock. 10:28 p.m., 17 minutes until surgery. She could call the police, but what would she say? The records had been altered. She could do nothing. Let a man die. Betty closed her eyes. She saw herself at 23, reciting the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. Then at 25, facing Dr. Eris Thorne in a tribunal as he lied under oath about a mistake he'd made, and she'd caught. She'd lost everything that day, but she'd never lost the oath. Betty grabbed her ID badge and a flash drive. Then she headed for the elevators. Down. The basement records room was behind a door marked Archives Authorized Personnel Only. Her badge showed red, access denied. Betty pulled a paperclip from her pocket and fashioned a crude lockpick. 15 seconds later, the lock clicked. Inside, she powered on the ancient computer terminal and navigated to the lab reports folder. There. Park. Kwang-seok. Blood draw. 9:52 p.m. Results? O positive. Proof. Unaltered. Then straight from the source. Betty copied the file to her flash drive and printed a hard copy. The dot matrix printer screamed and rattled. The door opened behind her. Dr. Eris Thorne stood in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs. He looked at her, at the computer, at the paper in her hand. Then he smiled. Hello, Betty. I was hoping I wouldn't have to deal with you tonight. You're murdering him, Betty said. Thorne stepped inside. That's dramatic. I prefer to think of it as correcting a problem that's plagued this city for 15 years. You're a surgeon. You took an oath. So did you, before I had to take it away. His eyes were cold. Kwang-seok Park has killed 17 people. He runs trafficking operations. His brother offered me $5 million to ensure he never wakes up. Money I'll use to fund the children's oncology wing this hospital desperately needs. You don't get to play God. Neither do you. He moved closer. Surgery starts in 8 minutes. Give me that paper and walk away. No, I'm going up there. I'm stopping this. The surgical floor is locked down. You won't get within 50 feet of the OR. Then I'll find another way. Thorne pulled out his phone. Betty didn't wait. She grabbed the flash drive and ran. The basement was a warren of corridors. Betty ran toward the laundry room, her only option. The laundry chute. She found the access shaft, a vertical tunnel 3 feet wide with metal rungs welded to one side. 4 stories. 50 feet. In the dark. Betty started climbing. The rungs were slick with grease. Her hands slipped, but she hauled herself higher. Below, voices entered the laundry room. Radio chatter. She climbed faster. 1 floor, 2 floors. Her arms burned. 3 floors. She could see light above. 4 floors. Betty pulled herself up and rolled onto the surgical floor's laundry room, gasping. The clock read 10:41 p.m., 4 minutes. The surgical floor was white and chrome and hushed efficiency. Betty pressed against the wall, orienting herself. Operating room 4 was at the east end. She ran. A nurse spotted her. You can't be here. Betty didn't stop. The corridor stretched ahead. She could see OR4 and 2 of Kwang-seok's bodyguards standing guard. They saw her coming. The larger one moved to intercept. Stop, now. I need to get in there. The surgery, there's a mistake in the blood work. They're going to kill him. The labs were falsified. The bodyguard's expression didn't change. Step back, ma'am. Listen to me. Betty's voice cracked. Your boss stated O positive during intake. Someone altered the results to A negative. If they use the wrong blood products, it will trigger hemolytic shock. He'll die. Behind them, through the window, she could see the surgical team gathering. Kwang-seok draped and prepped, seconds from the first incision. Please, Betty said. I know I'm just the receptionist, but I used to be a hematology student. I know blood, and I'm telling you, he's dead if they make that cut. Min-ho, Nurse Sarah appeared. She looked terrified but determined. Min-ho, I think she's right. I saw Dr. Thorne changing something in the records earlier. When I asked, he told me to forget I'd seen anything. Min-ho looked at Sarah, at Betty, at the door. Then he grabbed the handle and threw it open. Betty ran through. Stop the surgery! 6 masked faces turned. Dr. Thorne stood with a scalpel positioned over Kwang-seok's sternum, 1 millimeter from the first incision. Min-ho grabbed Betty from behind. The second bodyguard rushed in, weapon drawn. Someone hit an alarm. Red lights flashed. She's insane! Thorne shouted. Get her out! We're losing time. The blood type is wrong, Betty screamed. Check the intake file. He's O positive, not A negative. The labs were falsified. That's ridiculous, Thorne said steadily. This woman is a disgruntled former employee with a history of false accusations. I have proof. Betty pulled out the crumpled printout. Physical lab results from before the records were altered. O positive. Check it before you kill him. Nobody moved. Nurse Sarah took the paper with shaking fingers. Her face went white. Dr. Thorne, this shows O positive, time-stamped 9:52 p.m. Obviously forged, Thorne said, but his voice had changed. The anesthesiologist pulled up the digital file. Current record shows A negative, drawn at 8:30 p.m., but that doesn't make sense. The patient didn't arrive until after 9:30. Pre-admission labs, Thorne said quickly. What referring facility? Betty demanded. He came in an emergency convoy. There was no time. The room's energy shifted. Min-ho's grip loosened. Everyone out, Thorne said calmly. Contamination breach. We'll re-sterilize and restart in 20 minutes. He was going to wait her out, remove her, then proceed anyway. No, Betty said. She bit Min-ho's hand. He released her. Betty grabbed a sterile tray and hurled it across the room. Instruments scattered. Then she planted herself between Thorne and the table, arms spread. You want to cut him? You cut through me first. And I swear, Dr. Thorne, if you take one step, I will scream about what you did to me 3 years ago loud enough for everyone to hear. Thorne's face went rigid. You're insane. Am I? Or am I the only person who still believes doctors aren't supposed to kill people for money? The doors burst open. Hospital security rushed in. Behind them, Margaret Chen, the hospital administrator. What in God's name is happening in my operating room? Everyone talked at once. Margaret raised one hand. Silence fell. Someone explain, 30 seconds. Betty met her eyes. The patient's lab results were falsified. Someone changed his blood type from O positive to A negative. If surgery proceeds, it will trigger fatal hemolytic shock. I have physical proof from basement archives. Margaret's gaze shifted to Sarah. Is this true? Sarah held up the printout. This shows O positive, ma'am. And digital records show A negative, the anesthesiologist added quietly. But the timestamp doesn't match arrival time. Margaret turned to Thorne. Explain. For the first time, Thorne's composure cracked. There must have been a system error. Then we verify. Right now. Fresh blood draw. Rush labs. 20 minutes. Margaret looked at security. No one leaves this room. The second blood draw came back at 11:08 p.m. O positive. Margaret stood holding the lab report. Dr. Thorne, you're suspended effective immediately. Security will escort you to administrative holding. Do not speak to anyone. Do not access any systems. Do not leave this building. Thorne didn't move. Then he laughed. Bitter. You have no idea what you've just protected. No idea what he'll do with the life you've saved. Neither do you, Betty said quietly. That's the point. Security took him away. Betty felt her legs give out. She sat hard on the floor, shaking. Nurse Sarah knelt beside her. You did it. You actually did it. Min-ho offered his hand. He will want to speak with you, when he wakes. The surgery proceeded at 11:47 p.m. with Dr. Reyes and triple-verified blood work. Betty watched from the observation gallery. 4 hours later, they closed the final incision. Kwang-seok's heart beat steady and strong. Betty was asleep in a chair when Min-ho touched her shoulder. He's awake. He's asking for you. She followed him into the recovery room. Early morning light filtered through windows. Kwang-seok looked smaller in the hospital bed, connected to monitors, but his eyes were sharp. Sit, he said, voice rough. They looked at each other. Min-ho tells me you saved my life. Is this true? I stopped a surgery that would have killed you. You're also not a receptionist. Legally, I am. Dr. Thorne, he's the one who took your medical license? His eyes were steady. He falsified evidence, destroyed your career. He left me with myself. That turned out to be enough. Kwang-seok smiled slightly. My brother paid him $5 million to ensure I died on that table. My brother will not live to spend that money. Dr. Thorne is in federal custody. He reached for a folder and handed it to her. Inside were legal documents, an exoneration letter from the medical board, full restoration of her medical license, and a deed to a medical clinic 3 blocks away. Betty's hands shook. I don't understand. You saved my life. That creates a debt. Your record will be cleared. The clinic is yours. Fully funded. You can practice medicine again. Why? Because I pay my debts, and because you looked at me and saw a patient, not a monster, just a man with the wrong blood type who needed someone to care enough to tell the truth. I didn't do it for a reward. I know. That's why you're getting one. Betty looked at the deed, at the impossible future spread before her. I don't work for you. I won't be part of your organization. I wouldn't ask you to. I have people who stay quiet. What I needed was someone brave enough to be loud. Betty folded the papers. Outside, the sun was rising. A new day. Thank you, she said quietly. Go home, Dr. Pullen. Get some sleep. Your clinic opens in 2 weeks. Betty walked out, clutching the folder. She pulled out her phone and dialed. Margaret? It's Betty. I need to give my 2 weeks' notice. I'm opening a clinic, Margaret laughed. Good for you, Dr. Pullen. The clinic opened 3 weeks later. Above the door, a sign. Pullen Community Health Center. Walk-ins. Welcome. All patients treated equally. Betty stood in front wearing a white coat that finally fit. She'd spent 3 years invisible. It had taken one night of being impossible to ignore. That was probably a fair trade. Sometimes what saves you isn't the person with the most credentials. It's the person who cares enough to look twice. Subscribe to see more stories of unlikely heroes rising when it matters most, and comment where you're watching from. I'd love to say hello and know how far this story has traveled.